Hey everybody, Dustin DePirac here. Just hanging out the Carrier Dome as they're cleaning stuff up around here. And Indiana gets Syracuse, gets the 2-3 again, and loses again. This one by an even bigger margin than the last time in D.C. last year at the NCAA East Regional semifinal. And that sort of heartbreaker, Indiana. In this one, at least early, played it actually probably better than they did in the first game. They didn't really fall behind. They fell behind 10-0, but they managed to rally a little bit. Actually had a lead in the first half, 27-26. Went down 33-29 at half. Actually scored the first 4 points in the second half, and then fell apart completely. Just a total mess, really, after that. I think they had 10 second-half turnovers after they only had 6 in the first half. And when they did, Syracuse really made them pay for those, especially really in the beginnings of the second half. I think they went on a 12-0 run. Syracuse did. I think Indiana had, 6 out of 7 possessions were turnovers. And from that, it just kept getting uglier. The lead swelled, got up over 20. And this one didn't really come close after that. And Tom Crean afterwards was about as disappointed as I've ever seen him. Actually used the word disgusted a lot. Was upset with the leadership, was upset with the failure to adhere to game plan, all those kinds of things. Obviously, if you're Indiana in this case, you're not wanting to shoot a bunch of threes. You're not wanting to take a bunch of outside shots. You want to get the ball inside because that's what you got. You've got bigger guys. Certainly got one of the better big men in the league in Noah Vonleh. And early, at least in the kind of from about the midway point of the first half when they really played their best basketball, that's what they were doing. They were moving the ball around well, getting good movement, good body movement, getting the ball in the paint, drawing fouls, finding a way, getting buckets, actually defending pretty well too. But in the second half, it wasn't a lot of that. A lot of just sort of careless passes. Moving the ball around the perimeter, settling for jump shots, settling for three-pointers, and that turned ugly pretty fast. And they only took 13 field goals in the second half, as opposed to 10 turnovers. So there wasn't a lot of possessions in that part, and just a lot of them again ended either in bad shots or in turnovers. Again, Tom Crean was really sort of let it out in this one. Haven't necessarily seen him go that direction in a while. Said that again, he said in the halftime locker room, he looked around and the guys were quiet. He was concerned that guys didn't necessarily believe they could win this game, even though they were in pretty good shape. They were only down 4 after having not played a great first half and not shot the ball extremely well. Against the number 4 team in the country, in a place one of the more intimidating arenas in the country. They get 26,000 here. Obviously, that's massive. Just not a lot of arenas can really fit that many, just because, again, this is a football stadium, and you can fit a lot of people in here, even though they cut half the place off. With all that going against them, they were doing okay. They were, adhering to the game plan, and yet in the second half, again, came into halftime, didn't look like they really had it, and, went out in the second half and really just fell apart. Causes a lot of questions. I think one thing Tom Crean said that was really interesting is, you want at least to come out of this one feeling like you understand what it takes to play at that level. Even if you lose the game, your guys get the experience of playing a team like Syracuse, getting an idea what the number 5 team in the country looks like, how it plays, what it does in the end of games, and getting an idea of just seeing the model necessarily. Even if you're not doing the same things, you just get an idea of what basketball looks like at that level, and you find out what you're capable of. You find out what you can hang with, how long you can stick with, a team of this caliber, and make it a game, whether you can take it all the way and whether you can actually win a game and get a real idea of who you are. And as far as Tom Crean was concerned, they didn't really get that idea. They didn't get, they didn't really find out who they were, what they were capable of. They just didn't find out, just really get a test of their mettle. They didn't, again, they felt like he didn't understand or doesn't get a better idea of who his team is, and his team doesn't get an idea of what it is, of what its own identity is from this game, because they were so lackluster in the second half. Obviously there's some questions I didn't think to ask. Some people, pointed this out to me on Twitter, didn't realize he didn't take a lot of timeouts in the second half, despite this fact, despite the fact that they weren't playing particularly well, that they weren't doing what they were being asked to do, that they weren't playing with the same kind of vigor, I guess, that you would have expect a young team in this position to do, with the motivation they would have had to have had. They didn't necessarily call a timeout and say, okay, guys, settle down and get back to what you were doing. He was obviously yelling at them for the sidelines, but that didn't seem to necessarily take. So just, kind of bad all around in that case. I mean, they You look at the stats; they're pretty ugly. 15 for 41 from the game, 36.6% shooting. Only again 6 for 13 from the field in the second half. 16 turnovers, 10 in the second half, which turned into 15 Syracuse points. They got outscored in the paint. Syracuse had 32, Indiana's 22. That doesn't usually happen with the size that Indiana's got. Dead even on the rebounds. That's the first time all year Indiana has not won a rebounding battle. Before this one, they had the leading rebounding margin in the country. So that obviously does not help that cause. 4 for 14 from 3. Got at least some points at the free throw line, 18 to 24. Actually scored more at the line than Syracuse did, but need to have a bigger gap than that if you're not going to shoot it well. Trevor Cooney did for Syracuse, went off for 21 points, 5 for 9 from 3, played a really good game. Tyler Ennis, their talented freshman point guard, 17 points, 8 assists, 7 rebounds. Just had a really solid game all around. CJ Fair had 15 points for Indiana. Vonleh had 17, 13 to 16 at the line, only had 2 field goals. Yogi Ferrell had 4 buckets, all of them threes, 12 points. And he shot all 7 from 3. Didn't actually look bad from out there, but just wasn't, he didn't necessarily get a lot going either. 3 turnovers of those are his. 4 of them were Vonleh's, 3 of them were Troy Williams. So, really a lot of bad to go across the board on this one. And nobody else shot particularly well other than Farrell and Vonleh. So interested to see how guys are going to react to this. Again, the leadership was called out on some level. She was called out, not so much directly, but just something about him not being in the same kind of role. But he just said, Tom Crean used the word disgusted with the lack of leadership, and obviously that goes to guys like Will and Yogi Ferrell and that sort of thing, and other guys. There's not a lot of guys that are in a position to be vocal yet on this team because there's not a lot of guys that have had the experience, but certainly he was asking for more from a lot of the guys, a lot of the upperclassmen, and didn't necessarily get it. So all around, Tom Crean's not happy. Certainly people are not going to be happy with Tom Crean again. Indiana goes against a really good 2-3 zone. It doesn't work. I don't know if there's a lot of examples of them going against an average 2-3 zone and not working, but it's really the Syracuse 2-3 that really gets them in trouble. They have a really hard time working the ball in the paint and getting it there consistently, there off the dribble, hitting shots against it. So, again, just doesn't look good for really anyone in the Indiana group on this one. Again, wasn't necessarily a game that Indiana could have expected to win. This is the number 4 team in the country right now, coming off a win at Maui, 8-0 so far. It's looking at like one of the better teams in the country. But still, again, like Green said, that they don't necessarily get a good measuring stick out of this or something they get to look at and say, here's where we are. Also, they, on their best 2 chances against ranked teams to get sort of a resume win out of the non-conference season, they don't get one. Still have Notre Dame left at the Crossroads Classic in a couple of weeks, but that's not obviously something of the caliber of this. But so again, Indiana's first road trip doesn't go so well at all. Anyway, back for North Florida on Saturday. Thanks, everybody.